Clemson is on a bye week. They're 6-1. They're number 9 in the country. We're going to talk about, can they fix what's broken, or things that might be, I don't know, still have a little rust on them. Maybe a little more development. Maybe they need to spend a little more time in the oven, if you know what I mean. I want to talk about that and more. Welcome to the channel. I'm Brian. I'm glad you are here. Y'all, it's past mid-October. And by the way, next week on I believe it's the 28th, if my memory serves me correct, is the 1-year anniversary of Dabo versus Tyler from Spartanburg. I'm thinking about doing a show on that. I'm thinking about just having some good old-fashioned, innocent fun with it. Maybe stir the pot a little bit. Maybe get some of you a little worked up so much you have to go see the cardiologist. You can help send his third child to an Ivy League school. It's going to be great. But anyway, I'm glad you're here. I hope you'll subscribe. Remember, it is free. So if you're like, I don't know if I'll subscribe, I watch you all the time, make sure you have. I do appreciate it. Get in here real quick and say hello to a bunch of people getting in. Got John Thomas, top of the morning to you. Good day, sir. I would lift up the front of my head, but you don't want me to do that. It's good to see you, John Thomas. Supporting the channel on a monthly basis. That symbol beside John Thomas's name means he's supporting on a monthly basis. Thank you for supporting the channel. I don't know about Clemson being broken, but my can opener is I had to open my pickled carp tenderloins with my teeth. Great job, Eric. Great job. Bobby Durkin, smart twin. That is correct. Tiger Nate. Good morning, Brian. Good to see you, Tiger Nate. It's been a while. Yes, Tiger Fan 24. I was late. You're right. I was late. And Steve-O, Indian Land, South Carolina. Hey there, Brian. It's good to see you. All right, let's dive right in. Clemson right now is 6-1, number 9 in the country. They're on a bye. This is their second and last bye of the season. Now, if you want to see something, I'm going to try to share my screen here. I'm going to share my screen so you can see this stuff for yourself as I go through it. Now, I want to tell you this. If I go to ESPN and share my screen and you start to hear audio, please let me know, or else I will get some type of copyright strike, and that's not what I'm trying to do. But I want to show you where Clemson is at. I'm going to start off with the good. Today is not about being negative. I always tell you that, but a lot of people don't believe me. Today is not about being negative. Today is about being realistic. So if it's good, we're going to be realistic about it. If there's a question, we're going to be realistic. If there is a question, we're going to be realistic about it. And if it does not look good, that is not being a pessimist or looking at the team with a view of the glass is half empty. When you play against a really good football team, they're not going to give one flying flip about your glass. They're going to take it away from you and slam it in the ground and then slam you in the ground. So we're just going to be as realistic as possible today, good or, well, not so good. Here's a good one. Here's a good one to look at. Not Wes Goodwin, but here's a good one for us to look at. I'm going to move myself down here. This is total offense for the NCAA, right? Look at that. Clemson is number 7 overall total offense. This past week, they had over 500 total yards against UVA. And that second half, they really cranked it out. But look at the company that Clemson's in there. I mean, you're looking at Tennessee, Ohio State, Indiana. I know Indiana really hasn't played anyone, but Indiana's doing something that they don't do. And that's just win ball games. When Indiana would lose games that they wasn't supposed to lose. They have Boise State and that Giante playing running back up there. That guy's unbelievable. Ole Miss, Miami. But Clemson is number 7 in the country right now. Offensively. Some good things. I know that this is, and I know someone who's going to come in here and say, well, y'all haven't played anyone. You're doing it against nobody. Folks, you need to understand something. That just a year ago, Clemson could I can't speak. When could I ever? Could play a bad football team and not put up these numbers. So you need to get that. Last year, Clemson almost lost to Wake Forest on homecoming. So Even if these numbers are against bad football teams, at least they're doing it, right? So let's switch over to let's go over to total defense. Now, Texas is a top there, although they got smacked around. Clemson's defense is not where it normally is. And you're seeing that here. It's not in the top 50. Clemson's ranked number 53. And that's a place where things are broken, right? Number 53. Clemson should be better than this. Clemson was a top 10 defense last year. And you say, well, Brian, they had Jeremiah Trotter, they had Nate Wiggins, they had Rook, they had XT, they had Tyler Davis. Notice there that if you go and you watch the game, I still believe our front seven is fantastic. But we are seeing problems in the secondary, namely with the DBs here and there, and some miscommunication when certain people comes in at safety. But overall, Clemson is not bad, obviously. They're not bad. But the defense, there needs to be some work, right? All right, now I'm going to share my screen here. And if y'all hear anything, in fact, before I share my screen, this is from ESPN. I am going to try my very best to ensure that there is nothing that you can hear on this. What about all the weird ads at the bottom of ESPN's page? But I want to share this, and I want you to see this. I want you to see the numbers before I talk about anything, and everybody gets all mad and stuff, like I hit your mama in the face or something. God, don't worry. It's just college football coaches you don't know and players you don't know that you get really mad about. You're fine. You'll be okay. All right. So make sure that view looks good. Cade Klubnik, 1,836 yards passing. The guy threw the worst interception, I believe, of his career this past week. But the good thing is he's only thrown 3 interceptions all year. Last year he threw 9. So when he said 5 of those were not on him, but you know how that works. 20 touchdowns so far. He has 5 ball games left. So if you want to finagle with the math there, could he see, another 10 to 12 touchdowns? That's right off the top of my head. 10 to 12 touchdowns passing. Do we see him get close to 3,000 passing yards? Remember, he still has not hit the halfway mark in attempts of his overall attempts passing last year. So he threw for this right off the top of my head, 454 passing attempts last year. So half of 454 is 227. He's played 7 games. He's still only thrown 219 passes. So he hasn't even reached the halfway mark of last year. And we see the numbers that he's put up. We see the touchdowns. We see the lack of interceptions. And that interception last week against Virginia was the worst he's ever thrown, in my opinion. Go back and watch the view from like if you were in the west end zone looking forward. He literally had a sea of white around him. I have said twice now, and here goes 3 times. The wide receiver, the receiver looked like he was sitting in a marshmallow. There were so many white jerseys around him. We haven't had too many of those Cade moments this year. Phil Moffitt, 682. We have Antonio Williams. I'm glad to see the guy back. 393 receiving yards. We're going to get into some of these other guys. Wade Woodaz, leading tackler on the team. Avion Terrell. Is anybody shocked that he's doing as well as he is? And he's one of those guys, he was a 3-star coming out of high school, something like that. I mean, this is not a 5-star player. He is part of the friends and family plan. So far, the guy's done fantastic. He's a fighter. He's a fighter. Cade Klubnik is the second leading rusher, 41 attempts, 227 yards. He has 4 touchdowns on the ground. Leading receivers won't go through the numbers, but number 1, Antonio Williams, and you got Brennan Stoll. Glad to see Brennan Stoll in there. TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco. Bryant Wesco hasn't played in a few weeks, and you see that yardage. That's how well he's playing. Glad to see both the freshmen get going, and glad to see Troy Stellato catching the football, getting the ball thrown to him. Some really good things. Some really good things there to turn and look at and go, yeah, we have that. We have that going on. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen. I'm just going to get to some commentary, and I'll get back to the schedule here in just a second. But what have we seen good out of Clemson? I said it already. You're seeing Clemson move the football. Yes, it's against bad football teams. And I agree with anyone who wants to point that out, whether you're a Clemson fan or whether you despise Clemson. Clemson has done this against football teams that are not very good. I go back to my statement from earlier in the video that Clemson has struggled to move the football over the past few years against bad football teams. So for you to be able to right the ship, or whatever term you want to use, what do you have to do? Well, I'll tell you what you have to do. You have to start with the basics. Beat bad teams bad. I mean, really. Beat bad teams bad. There is no reason for a bad football team to hang around with you. No reason. Come up with all the excuses, come up with all that, regurgitate some saying made by a coach 500 years ago. That's great, and maybe a little bit of it's true, but here's the truth. You're supposed to beat a bad team bad. And if you don't, most likely it's because you have a lack of focus. You're focusing on something else. You don't think you have to try that hard. You've read your own media about yourself, and you're believing it, and the other team's just like, we have nothing to lose. We're going to try to beat them. You beat bad teams bad. Clemson is doing that. We're seeing more creativity on the offensive side of the football. Again, I anchor this statement to, we have not seen creativity to the level we're seeing it now. I did not say that we've reached the upper echelon of creativity, but I'm just saying we have not seen creativity at Clemson at this level, in the play calling and the schemes, as much as we've seen in a while for the Tigers. We're seeing an offensive line that's improving. We're seeing Matt Luke, a true expert, being there at Clemson. We're seeing the results of that. And if you want something done right, hire an expert. Now, if you want to give someone a chance in the midst of an expert and hire some guy who's never coached before, but you see something in him and you want to bring him in, and basically he's being policed or an eye kept on by the experts around him, wonderful. But you have to have more experts in the coaching room than newbies or first-timers. Or, here's what you get. You get what Clemson's got over the past 3 to 4 years. So, that is what I'm saying. I'm seeing Clemson reap the benefits of hiring an expert at the offensive line level. And I want to pause there, and I want to talk about recruits. I know that Clemson's lost on some recruits that are offensive linemen, and true, we need those. We need those guys. We want those guys. Here's what I want to throw out there to you Clemson fans. You know me, I'm a critic. I'm just having fun here. I'm just having fun here, having a blast talking about a game. I'm not talking about your mama or something that matters. It's a bunch of coaches and players you probably at best shook hands with as you passed them in Chipotle or something downtown Clemson. But Clemson has an expert coach at the offensive line level. And when you have an expert there, you can bring in 3-star recruits and he can mine them into first and second round talent, third round talent of the NFL. And that's what Sweeney used to do because he had no choice. Yeah, he'd get a 5-star here, he'd get a 5-star there. But don't forget the guys who were 3 stars. Don't forget the guys who were 2 stars, who went on to play in the NFL. no matter what side of the ball they played on or what position. So Matt Luke would like to get the 5-star, the David Sanders. He would love to get those guys. He would like to get the 4 stars in there. But I do want to offer you the thought that he is that good that he can take a 3-star he believes he can develop, and he can do it. So we're seeing the changes on the offensive line. And in fact, after that, Cade is benefiting from that. The wide receivers are benefiting from that. Phil Maffa is benefiting from that. So I'm glad to see that. The front seven on the defense. Front seven on the defense is looking, like a Clemson front seven. It's the secondary, namely with the corners and some of the miscommunication at safety, that we have seen that makes you shake your head. Now, pause there. Is the secondary that bad, or has the secondary been that good over the past how long? I mean, how long has Mike Reed been there with the DBs? What, Mickey Collins got the safeties? I got that. But I'm just saying, how good have we had it in the secondary? I mean, Nate Wiggins was a beast last year. And we know the players that's played at Clemson in the secondary. We know the guys who's played defensive back, who's played safety. We know those players. Heck, there's been so many good ones that we've had that it's easy to forget them. I was watching a game. It was from that 2016 season. It was a replay of the game. I think it was Clemson and Louisville on ESPN something. I don't know, ACC network. And there was a player that I remembered him, but I forgot him. Does that make sense? Like, it's been that long ago. You got to remember that 2016 season is 8 years ago. So don't feel too bad if you forgot some names outside of Deshaun Watson, Hunter Renfrow, Wayne Gallman, Mike Williams, those guys. I get it if you don't feel too bad. But my point is Clemson has been spoiled when it comes to defensive backs and the secondary. Here's where the broken part is at. Oddly enough, the secondary is having its issues here and there. Okay, let's talk about against Virginia. Yes, they had a third string in. They had this, that, and the other. Now, you know me, I want these guys to get more playing time. And I know that there's going to be the excuse of Dabo didn't want to run up the score on Tony. But I think those second, third string, fourth string, umpteen string players went in just a touch too early. Because notice Tony attacked them immediately. And they did it. They actually did it. They made Clemson look really, really bad. A lot of miscommunication. One of the players, I think it's Strozier, bit big time. I mean, he got played, man. And yes, you have to get better. You have to get better. You have to get better in the secondary because that type of stuff, I mean, once they get film on you and they know you'll bite like that, they're coming after you. And you know me, I don't like to, I'm not going to call out anybody. I'm just saying the DBs across the board. Avion Terrell is playing lights out. He's playing pretty doggone good, y'all. He is living up to the family name. But the secondary has to pull it together. Because here's one of these statements I'm going to make that some of you are going to be like, Brian, if will come true when you play the right team. If you play a team that has really good wide receivers that doesn't drop the ball, unlike Florida State. Florida State dropped a lot of passes against Clemson, and they had schooled the Tigers. Secondary. Schooled them. They schooled everybody from my memory except for anyone named Avion Terrell. And that's a mouthful. You think Georgia drops that pass? Oh, yeah, we know they don't. You think Oregon drops those passes like Florida State did? By the way, I watched Florida State lose to Duke the other night. They brought in the true freshman quarterback for Florida State, the kid out of Savannah. He threw a beautiful pass over the top. Florida State player had beat the help over the top. I mean, it was just a beautiful catch, just like went right through his arms. And I sat there and I went, thank your lucky stars, Duke, because you play a good football team, they're catching that football. You play a mediocre football team, they're catching that football. So Clemson cannot, in the secondary, cannot hang their hopes, dreams, championship, ACC championship desires on the possibility that you'll continue to play Florida State like wide receivers. And if that is your strategy, you're going to lose. And I know that's not what Mike Reed is teaching his guys. I know that's not what Wes Goodwin or Coach Sweeney is putting in their head. And if you talk to the players, that's not what they want. But it is happening. It is happening. And so that's an area that I see that we have to improve. And then going back to the offense, I keep saying this, and I mean it. We cannot go back in our shell. We cannot go back in our shell. We still have to be creative. If you watch that Texas game, Texas got back in the game against Georgia once they became creative. But once they decided to be creative, it was too late. Georgia had already tore into them, had not their two quarterbacks around, their highly paid quarterbacks around. And so Clemson needs to continue to be creative while nailing down the basics. And the Tiger schedule is, I mean, it's ripe. It's ripe for the taking. So I'm going to see if I can pull up a better schedule view than this one on ESPN. But we're just going to look at the schedule. And in fact, you know what? Forget that. I'm just going to go to the view, and if y'all hear anything, y'all just scream or something. But let's talk about who Clemson has to play up to this point. Let me see. Share this. I feel like an old dude. Let me see where the buttons are at. Go to the button right here, and I'm going to share the ESPN screen. Okay. If y'all hear anything, I'm going to turn on the comment section so I can see this. Let me know if you hear anything, because I don't have in-ears in, but the sound could be coming through my interface over here. So who do we have left? We have Louisville. We're off this week. Then we have Louisville, at Virginia Tech, at Pitt, Citadel, and South Carolina. All right, let's look at Louisville really, really quick and their who they are and what they've done. All right. They just lost to Miami. They can put up points against you. See that? 45 points? That's Miami's Achilles heel, is that their defense is not what we think it is or what they think it is. Their offense is really good. I mean, you saw it just a second ago. Miami has one of, if not the top offense in the United States at this point. Who has Miami played? I'm going to leave that there. We found out that meant something with Texas. Texas hadn't played anybody. Well, they beat Michigan. The artist formerly known as Michigan. They have no Harbaugh. They have a lot of the players from last year are gone. So, yeah, they beat the defending national champions, but not really. But we see the losses. We see the losses that Louisville's had. Yeah, they played close with Notre Dame. They played close with SMU. They beat Virginia. They are 7 points per game away from tying, which you have to have one more point to win. But you say that lost by 7. So Louisville is a good football team. They're going to come in. They're going to play Clemson hard. They're going to play them very tough. They're not going to be off the week before they're playing Boston College. So we need to keep an eye. We need to keep an eye on them. Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is a team. They're 4-3, 2-1 in the conference. They started off losing to Vanderbilt. We thought, oh my goodness, Vanderbilt is just so terrible. Vanderbilt is so terrible, hence VT is terrible. Well, Vanderbilt is not terrible. They're not your standard run-of-the-mill Vanderbilt team. Okay? They're not. So that loss, you lost by 7 points, but still, Vandy ended up being better. Losing to Rutgers, no. Losing to Miami by 4, again, you see they put up 34 points on Miami. Big question about their defense. But they've won since. This coming week, they're playing against Georgia Tech. They play Syracuse, then they go to play Clemson. To me, this Virginia Tech game is one of the most dangerous games on the schedule. And we need to pay attention to them because they're playing a lot better football than what their record shows. Louisville, I just showed that to you. Let's talk about, dadgummit, clicked on Virginia. Let's look at Pitt. Okay, everybody's talking about Pitt. They're 6-0, 2-0 in the conference, number 19 in the country. Who have they played? Now, I know that people don't like to do this. They don't like to use their brain and analyze who someone's played. Well, I'm just dumb enough to do that. I'm dumb enough to look at your competition and say, you haven't played anybody. So, yes, they're 6-0, but they beat Kent State. They allowed 24 points. Cincinnati, they beat by 1 point. They allowed 27. They beat West Virginia. They allowed 34. They beat Youngstown State. I mean, who cares? Look at that. They allowed 24 points right there against a North Carolina team that is just abysmal. They won, but 24 points. Then look at this. California. They just played California, and they won 17-15. California's not a good football team. They're not terrible, but they're not a good football team. Then they're going to play, you see this game right here. That's in a couple of days. Thursday night, they're going to play Syracuse. Then at SMU, then they have Virginia, then Clemson comes to town. On paper, I am not saying that Clemson has to look past this game. Well, they're 6-0 and undefeated, and you have to respect that. Who have you played? It flipping matters, y'all. It does matter. So look at that. Number 9, Clemson, coming to Pitt. Pitt, who have they played? Kent State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Youngstown State, North Carolina, and struggled with California. That's who they've played. And I see Clemson more winning that game. Of course, you have the Citadel. And I want to talk about South Carolina. I love taking a dump on South Carolina. It's fun. It's part of the rivalry. It's a great time. Taking a dump on South Carolina is a favorite pastime of mine. And you know what? It's a favorite pastime of any worthwhile Carolina team. You know why? Because it's fun. Now, I've told you that my oldest child is a Gamecock fan. So I actually see a lot of Gamecock football, folks. I actually watch a lot of South Carolina Gamecock football, so I can sit there and tell you the players. And getting past the fandom and the fun and the laughing and the this, that, and the other, I want you to look at this. That game against Old Dominion is the greatest outlier on their schedule, even past the Ole Miss game, because that Old Dominion game, they should have lost. That's why they were shocked when they played Kentucky the way they did, and they beat them 31-6. That LSU game, I believe South Carolina got robbed on that one. I think that hit on Nussmeier was no big deal. Well, the rules is, guys, you realize how many old gray-haired men is running college football? And it takes the people who are not set in their ways to get through to those guys' heads to make the right decision. I used to deal with it when I officiated basketball for many years. We would have to deal with the old-timers not accepting that their way of thinking was wrong. Not all of it, but on certain rules, they were wrong. This is one of those deals to where it's wrong. If Nussmeier cannot basically be touched, Nussmeier should take a knee. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Then they beat Akron, the crap out of Akron. This is the worst loss of the season. I mean, what a joke. Ole Miss is not that good. They're not terrible, but they're not that good. We've seen it already. And they beat Carolina 27-3. And you thought, oh, it's all downhill from there. Then they play Alabama. That game was really impressive. They just drilled Oklahoma. Now they have A&M, Vandy, Missouri, Wofford, and then Clemson. Now, they very well could lose 1, 2, 3 ball games and come into the game, 5-6? Or they could win a couple of those or one of those. Be 6 and not 5-6. Be maybe 6-5 somewhere in there coming into Death Valley. And all of us Clemson fans are going to be sitting there laughing, going, the Gamecocks has absolutely a snowball's chance in a very hot place of beating Clemson, and it happens. I'm telling you, this Gamecock team is a lot better than what you realize. And so Clemson needs to pay attention to Louisville. Yes, they need to pay a lot of attention to Virginia Tech, in my opinion. Pittsburgh hasn't played anyone. You have to pay attention to every game. Let's get that out of the way. But I'm telling you, do not look at the Gamecocks and go, well, they're the chickens. Yeah, and those chickens would love nothing more than to wreck what Clemson has been doing and the progress that they've tried to make over the past, since the beginning of the season, and we know what happened at the beginning of the season. Now, let's ask ourselves this. Kind of some closing thoughts here. And then I have a few announcements. I'm going to be a guest on a show tonight. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But, and have some guests that I'm trying to line up for this week. So let's talk about moving forward for the Tigers. Just focus. Focus. As an individual, as a unit, as a defensive side of the ball, as a team, focus. The coaches, focus. This schedule is so winnable that there's a great chance Clemson can go 11-1. There is a great chance that the Clemson Tigers, after week 1, can go 11-1. People are getting better. Players are getting better. And we see this with football teams, that they either get better or they fall apart for some reason, whether it's the injury bug, whether they had a lot of hype, or maybe they had a lot of expectation. Florida State, do you really think that Florida State's not good enough to beat that Duke team? Well, that Duke team is not that good. I'm sorry. But my point in saying these things is that Florida State fell apart because they were shocked that they were not reaching the expectations. And I think that they gave up. I think Florida State could have won 3 or 4 games already. I think they really could have. But that's what happens. Clemson is getting better. The question that still remains, to what level of improvement have we really seen? Because I care for my team. I don't want them getting TCU'd. I throw that term around. If you watch me all the time, you know what I mean. If you watch me, you know what I mean there. But for some of the new viewers, let me explain. TCU, what happened to them? Sonny Dykes' very first year at TCU, with Garrett Riley running things, Quentin Johnson, the NFL wide receiver, you had Max Dugan, whatever his name is. They went to the national championship. They beat Michigan, who would win it the very next year. They beat them in the opening round, got to the national championship against Georgia. They lost 65-7. No one remembers that season other than that for TCU. And what did it do to TCU last year? Nothing. What has it done for TCU this year? Nothing. It will hurt you more than it helps you. So I am saying, I'm putting this out here for everyone to hear. If Clemson is going to get to the playoff and they're going to get TCU'd, I hope they get upset now so we can save the embarrassment, save the brand, and live to see another day of potentially being competitive and fixing things, getting that extra year. Because if you get that gratification of right now only to be cost you everything at the end of the year, and then it cost us for the long term. I know a lot of you, even drunk on the excitement of right now, you would rather, once you sober up, you would rather Clemson get upset right now, save them from the playoff. They can't go to the playoff, but they don't go to the playoff and get upset and beat into the ground. I'm just going to leave that out there. You just think about that for a second. Folks, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. It is free. The channel's been blowing up. Appreciate it. Y'all been good. A lot of you, I see the same faces in here. That is awesome because that means you like what I'm doing. So pass it along to anyone who, likes this sort of stuff. I do appreciate it. Tonight at around 5 o'clock, I'm going to be on the College Huddle. The College Huddle, maybe under Eric Boggs, the OHIO podcast. He's actually doing a national show. He's going to have a bunch of different people on from different college football teams. They're going to be talking. He asked me to come on the show, so I'm going to talk about Clemson. I want to talk about the ACC, where they stand in the college football playoff. The most likelihood of, unless there's an upset, that Clemson and Miami gets together in Charlotte for an ACC championship. So we will see. We will see if that happens, but I will be on the show. Also, the Rock Boys. If anybody knows the Rock Boys, these guys are fantastic. Trying to line up the schedule with them, trying to get them on hopefully this week. If not, it will try to do that next week. Also, John Kurtz, that's been working with ESP. He's worked with ESPN. He's worked with others. He was supposed to be on the show the past 2 Mondays. We're trying to land it this coming Monday. But if you have any guests, and I'm going to keep it family friendly here. I'm not going to be saying a bunch of crazy stuff and getting just downright ridiculous. But if you have anyone and you're like, hey, I think they would be a good guest on your show, or I'd be a good guest on their show, just let me know. I think that would be a lot of fun. I always like talking to people and get in here, say hello to a few people. We got Matthew in here. We got WB2DX. It's good to see you, my friend. We got God Clemson in here. We have Zach. We have Roger Parks. Style points count. He did the right thing putting the starters back in. That's right. That's right. I agree with you, Roger Parks, and thank you for supporting the channel. I see that symbol beside your name. You're one of the OGs. I appreciate it so much, my friend. Zach, it's good to see you. Good to see you in here. Rock Boys, Rock 904 Hurricane. You're right, they do rock. And then my friend Stuart Crandall, met Stuart in downtown Greenville a couple of weeks ago. He came up and said hi to me. Stuart Crandall, it's good to see you, my friend. I'm glad you're in here, and maybe we'll run into one another very, very soon. So maybe at the Christmas show. You know what I'm talking about. We'll keep it vague. Maybe at the Christmas show. All right, folks. I hope you'll drop a line in here, say hello, hit the thumbs up. And as always, go Tigers.